Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with Pro Wrestling Logic, and we continue our Tuesday Night Titans TNT review series. This is the June 21st edition of 1985. We will be finishing the series here within the next week or two. Just a note, we did skip the year in review, first year in review, because most of the segments, if not all of the segments on that particular program, have been reviewed through the history of the reviews we've already done, so I felt it kind of pointless to do that. In any event, we will cover now the June 21st edition. Also, please like, subscribe, comment below. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so we can help with COVID relief, and that is something we're really passionate about doing on both my channels. I also run a life coaching and life advice channel as well, Golden Opportunities Coaching. Go over there and subscribe if you like. Anyway, Junkyard Dog starts us off. Dog is new, relatively new, off of the benefit of new Mid-South Television, Bill Watts' promotion, and he is a big get for the WWF at the time, really hitting a blow to the Mid-South area, and Dog talks about being happy with the fans, happy with the promotion, happy with the opportunities he's given. Then we go into a Junkyard Dog match. Tag match action as we see JYD and Tito Santana versus Matt Bourne and Steve Lombardi. Really kind of at least to me, a bizarre combination of Bourne and Lombardi. I mean, Bourne just 3 months ago, or a little bit less, 2.5 months ago, on WrestleMania in a match with Ricky Steamboat, and here can't even get traction to have a decent tag partner outside of Lombardi. Good team of Dog and Santana, though. Wonder if they might not have been planned for bigger things, and then Dog splits off because he ends up connecting with the audience really well. They work well together. Santana does the majority of the more technical work, whereas Dog does the power work and the, just beating people up and slams and whatnot. Dog with a massive power slam helps to get the victory. JYD looking really good in his maiden voyages. He addresses having an opportunity at Hulk Hogan, which was bizarre for Vince to bring up. Also addresses Greg Valentine, which leads into our next segment. But the Junkyard Dog, at the time, probably one of the more over talents in the area, and it's sad. I mean, the WWE Network doesn't have the rights to have the original music. Queen's Another One Bites the Dust was used by Junkyard Dog at this time, had been used in Mid-South before this as well, I'm pretty sure, but music at the time in the late 80s was such a major part of mainstream music, was such a major part of talent getting over. It wasn't until the early 90s when they really switched to custom themes because, bands started cracking down on royalties and whatnot. But here, Dog can still use Another One Bites the Dust, and that's going to get a major reaction in almost every major arena. Jimmy Hart talks about having Greg Valentine and having being kind of the blue light special manager. He talks about being kind of cheapish. Talks also about the Hart Foundation and the early, run of that. Kind of threatens against Tito Santana and going in the direction of getting rid of Tito on a better level. Then we go to a match with Greg Valentine, who at this point I believe is still your Intercontinental Champion. Valentine, one of the more underrated Intercontinental Champions, at least in my view. That time, Valentine as champion, a big deal, of course. Then we move back to Santana, who Valentine took it from. Then we move on to Randy Savage. All of this within about a year's time, actually less than that. This is June of 85. Savage wins it in February of 86. So a bit of a hot potato for the time the Intercontinental title becomes, but it was always meant for guys that were good in the ring. Jimmy Hart has a present of explodable snakes, the styrofoam kind of or plastic kind of snakes out of a box for Alfred Hayes. Hayes obviously is intimidated by this. Hart tries to win him over before the snakes are released, and that does not happen. The interview with Desiree Peterson, rather nondescript, talks about being, wanting to make it in wrestling. I think she was intended to go further than she actually did, because she's here for a few months and then pretty well gone. Mentioned being involved with Moolah, mentioned wanting a shot at Wendy Richter, which at this point every woman does. Then we go on to a match with Peterson, which is clipped. She handily wins it. That is a match with Judy Martin. Now, if Judy Martin sounds familiar, that obviously is one half of the Glamour Girls later in 87, 88-ish. They are most notably known for their feud with the Jumping Bomb Angels, which I really would love to go back and watch those. We'll get there sooner or later, but those matches with the Jumping Bomb Angels, a big deal in the sense of really athletic women. Certainly All Japan women in the late 80s, early 90s becomes a thing, but here there is an infusion of athletic women. So think about that. The WWE does have a history going all the way back to the 80s of at least trying to give women an opportunity to be athletic. No, they did not stay committed to it all the time. And that's because really in the 80s, early 90s, there weren't that many women that were at a top level. So it was harder to find competition to make a true division during this time period. But then we see George the Animal Steel. Well, actually, after that, we see the winner of the trivia contest, which is a middle-aged lady talks about winning the contest being a dream and interacting with WWF being a dream. Typical fan-related stuff. Then we see Captain Lou Albano out there with George the Animal Steel. Now, there was a turn, which they highlight the turn here as well, which we will eventually highlight the whole match, as the turn takes place on one of the first, if not the first, Saturday nights. Yep, the first Saturday night's main event on the 11th of May of 85. We will be doing a full Saturday night's main event series after the TNT series is complete, so we will get here soon. But suffice to say, the team of Steel and Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov are wrestling against three individuals. Sheik, Volkov, and Steel lose the match, and Steel completely flips out, turning babyface in the process. Captain Lou Albano talks about Steel having brain injuries and calcium deposits and all this other happy horse cow. Needless to say, it turns into basically Lou Albano adopting George Steele and trying to get him some much-needed mental help. This turns into a interview segment that leads to a lot of chaos. But before that, George Steele versus Mike Powers. Steele sends Powers out of the ring on numerous occasions before finally beating him with a hammerlock type maneuver. George Steele reduced to saying just a few words, usually you, mine, these simple words. But then we go to the psychologist who tries to, Dr. Sigmund Ziff, psychiatrist, who is also a supposedly gynecologist, which I love how they just throw things out there that are completely ridiculous. This thick Jewish accent fellow who doesn't really do much for George, tries to hypnotize George, can't really get him under control. This will carry on for a couple of weeks, but and I'll talk about it again, but in suffice, I think it's the second appearance of Mr. Ziff. They actually put George through shock treatment, who then is temporarily able to say refined things like "how now, brown cow." But this is I guess an initial appointment this week, and he does not. George does not bode very well here. Ziff, however, thinks he can help George at this point. Then we go back to an interview where Ziff tries to hypnotize Lord Alfred Hayes. Before we close for this week, I mean, if you're gonna go back and watch anything from this, maybe you watch the clip of the Saturday night's main event match, although it's not really terribly necessary in the sense that, um, if you really want to watch that, just go and watch Saturday night's main event itself. Other than that, rather nondescript show. The trivia contest things kind of throw away. Greg Valentine, the Jimmy Hart interview is fun. His transition into a character can be really interesting, in so much that he is so much more in Memphis, and eventually we're going to cover Memphis and the CWA and the USWA and all this stuff on the channel, but that's probably several months, if not longer, down the line. But suffice to say, if you've seen Memphis Jimmy Hart, you know that he dumbs himself down to fit into New York. If you have never seen Memphis Jimmy Hart, worth going out of your way to see. He's there from probably the late 70s through 1984, 85 when he goes to WWF, where he stays until 93. But he's just such a more competent talker in the Memphis area, whereas he's a caricature of his former self here in New York. And so, might be worth going out of your way to watch the evolution of Jimmy over the next several months. But in any event, that is the June 21st edition of TNT. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.